The sweat dripping from Lily Patterson's brow had nothing to do with the scorching August heat baking through the walls of the Silver Spur Saloon in Dodge City, Kansas, and everything to do with the fever that felt like it was cooking her from the inside out. She dipped her scrub brush into the bucket of water, watching her trembling hands disturb the murky surface, and forced herself to keep moving across the wooden floorboards even though every muscle in her body screamed for rest. The year was 1878, and in this rough cattle town, a woman without family or fortune couldn't afford the luxury of being sick, not when the rent on her tiny room above the general store was due in 3 days and her savings amounted to barely $2. Lily had been working since dawn, first at the boarding house where she changed linens and emptied chamber pots, then at the saloon where she scrubbed floors and wiped down tables before the evening crowd arrived. She was 19 years old, alone in the world since consumption had taken her parents the previous winter, and determined to survive no matter what it took. The fever had started the night before, a dull warmth that she had ignored, but by morning it had transformed into a raging inferno that made her vision blur and her legs feel like they were made of wet rope. She pushed the brush forward, watching the bristles carve clean paths through the dust, and spilled whiskey, and tried to focus on the rhythm of the work. Forward, back, dip in the bucket, wring out the excess. Forward, back, dip, wring. Her calico dress clung to her skin, drenched with perspiration, and her blonde hair had escaped its pins to hang in damp strands around her flushed face. The afternoon sun slanted through the saloon's front windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny spirits, and Lily found herself fixating on them, her thoughts becoming loose and disconnected. The sound of boots on the boardwalk outside barely registered in her fevered consciousness. The door swung open, letting in a blast of hot Kansas wind that carried the smell of horses and sun-baked earth. Lily didn't look up. She kept scrubbing, kept moving, because stopping meant acknowledging how terrible she felt, and acknowledging it meant giving into it. "Place is closed until 5, she mumbled, her voice hoarse and barely audible. The footsteps came closer, measured and steady. "Ma'am, you all right?" The voice was deep, concerned, with the soft drawl of someone who had spent considerable time in Texas. Lily finally looked up, squinting against the light, and saw a tall figure silhouetted in the doorway. She tried to bring him into focus, but the fever made everything swim and shift. All she could make out was the shape of a wide-brimmed hat, broad shoulders, and the glint of spurs catching the sunlight. "I'm fine," she lied, turning back to her work. "Just finishing up here. Come back later if you want a drink." The man moved closer, and now Lily could see him better. He was young, maybe 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of strong coffee. His face was tanned from long days in the saddle, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, though he wasn't smiling now. He wore dusty range clothes, a faded blue shirt and leather vest, with a gun belt slung low on his hips. Everything about him spoke of hard work and honest living, from his calloused hands to his well-worn boots. "Ma'am, you look like you were about to fall over," he said, crouching down to her level. "When's the last time you ate something? Drank some water?" Lily wanted to tell him to mind his own business, wanted to maintain her dignity and independence, but the room chose that moment to tilt sideways. She grabbed for the edge of a table, missed, and felt her knees give way. The bucket tipped over, sending dirty water spreading across the floor she had just cleaned, and she had the distant thought that she would have to start all over again. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. The cowboy scooped her up as easily as if she weighed nothing at all, cradling her against his chest. Lily tried to protest, tried to tell him to put her down because she had work to finish, but the words came out as an incoherent mumble. "Where's your room?" he asked, his voice urgent but gentle. She managed to lift one trembling hand and point vaguely in the direction of the general store. "Above Harrison's." He didn't waste time with more questions. Carrying her like she was something precious and fragile, he pushed through the saloon doors and out into the blazing afternoon heat. Lily felt the sun beat down on her face for a moment before he adjusted his hold, positioning her so that his body shielded her from the worst of it. Through the haze of fever, she was aware of people stopping to stare, of whispered conversations and curious glances, but the cowboy ignored all of it. His focus was entirely on getting her somewhere safe. The stairs to her room were narrow and steep, accessed through a side door next to the general store. The cowboy managed them with careful precision, never jostling her or losing his grip. When they reached the top, he paused. "Which door?" "The one on the left," Lily whispered. The door wasn't locked because she had nothing worth stealing. He nudged it open with his boot and carried her inside. The room was tiny, barely large enough for the narrow bed, washstand, and small trunk that held her few possessions. A calico curtain hung at the single window, stirring slightly in the hot breeze. It was clean, though, painfully clean, because Lily had scrubbed every surface when she first moved in and maintained it religiously ever since. The cowboy laid her down on the bed with surprising gentleness, then immediately moved to the washstand. He poured water from the pitcher into the basin, found the clean cloth hanging on the rail, and soaked it thoroughly. When he returned to the bedside, he folded the cloth and placed it on her forehead. The coolness against her burning skin was such a relief that Lily let out a small sigh. "You are burning up?" he said, his brow furrowed with worry. "This is more than just heat exhaustion. How long have you been feeling poorly?" "Since last night," Lily admitted. Too weak now to maintain her pretense of being fine. "But I had to work. I have rent due and no one is going to pay me for lying in bed." The cowboy shook his head, a flash of something that might have been anger crossing his face, though she didn't think it was directed at her. "You are going to make yourself a lot worse pushing through like this. You need rest and medicine and someone to make sure you don't get worse." "I don't have money for a doctor," Lily said, the admission painful but necessary. "And I don't have anyone to look after me, so I just need to sleep for a bit, then I will be all right." "No, you will not," he said bluntly. He straightened up, and for a moment she thought he was going to leave, going to walk out and let her deal with this alone like everyone else in her life had eventually done. But instead he took off his hat and set it on the trunk, then pulled the single chair closer to the bed and sat down. "I'm staying." "You don't have to do that," Lily protested weakly. "You don't even know me." "Name's Cole Thornton," he said, as if that explained everything. "I run cattle up from Texas. Just brought a herd up to the stockyards and was stopping in for a drink before heading back south. And now I am sitting here making sure you do not get worse." "Lily Patterson," she managed, before another wave of fever washed over her, making her shiver despite the heat. Cole immediately noticed the change. He refreshed the cloth on her forehead, then found the thin blanket at the foot of the bed and spread it over her. "The fever's making you get the chills. Common enough. You just rest now. I will be right here." Lily wanted to argue more, wanted to maintain her independence and self-reliance, but the truth was that having someone there, having someone care enough to stay, felt like a blessing she hadn't known she desperately needed. Her eyes drifted closed, and she let herself sink into the relief of not having to fight anymore, at least not for the moment. Time became strange after that, measured not in hours but in the cycles of waking and sleeping, burning and shivering. Every time Lily surfaced from the fevered dreams that plagued her, Cole was there. Sometimes he was changing the cloth on her forehead, dipping it in fresh, cool water and laying it gently across her brow. Sometimes he was coaxing her to drink, holding a tin cup to her lips and murmuring encouragement when she managed a few sips. Once she woke to find twilight painting the room in shades of purple and gold, and Cole was sitting by the window, his profile outlined against the fading light, keeping watch like a sentinel. "You are still here," she whispered, her throat raw and dry. He turned immediately, rising from the chair to come to her side. "Course I am. How are you feeling?" "Like I got trampled by a stampede," Lily admitted, "but maybe a little better than before." Cole smiled for the first time since carrying her up those stairs, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger and lighting up those dark eyes. That's good to hear. You had me worried for a while there. Your fever was getting pretty high. Did you get a doctor? Lily asked, suddenly anxious about the cost. No, Cole said. Went down to the general store and talked to Mrs. Harrison. She sent up some willow bark tea and said if the fever kept climbing, then we would fetch Doc Morrison. But I think you might be past the worst of it now. Relief flooded through her. Thank you for staying, for taking care of me. I do not know why you did it, but thank you. Cole pulled the chair closer and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. Where I come from, you do not leave someone when they are in need. Simple as that. My mama would tan my hide if she found out I walked away from a sick woman, and rightly so. There was something in the way he said it, simple and matter of fact, that made Lily's chest tighten with emotion. She had been alone for so long, fighting to survive in a world that didn't care whether she lived or died, that this basic act of human kindness felt almost overwhelming. Tell me about her, Lily said softly. Your mother. Cole's expression grew warm with affection. She is the strongest woman I have ever known. Raised 4 boys mostly on her own after my father died when I was 12. Kept the ranch running, kept food on the table, made sure we all grew up knowing right from wrong. She taught me that strength is not just about being tough. It is about being kind when you do not have to be, helping when it costs you something, standing up when it would be easier to walk away. She sounds wonderful, Lily said, and felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, embarrassed by the display of emotion, but Cole saw anyway. Hey now, he said gently. You have been through a lot. It is all right to feel things. I just miss having family, Lily admitted, the words spilling out before she could stop them. Miss having someone who cares if I live or die. My parents were good people, hard-working and loving. When they got sick, I tried everything to save them, spent every penny we had on medicine and doctors, but consumption does not care how much you love someone or how hard you fight. It takes them anyway. Cole reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm and solid against hers. I am sorry you went through that. No one should have to face that kind of loss alone. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, connected by the simple human need for comfort and understanding. Outside, the sounds of Dodge City coming alive for the evening drifted through the window. Piano music from the saloon below, laughter and shouting, the clip-clop of horses passing by. But in that small room there was only quiet and the tentative beginning of something neither of them had expected. Over the next 3 days, Cole barely left Lily's side. He brought her food from the restaurant down the street, simple things like broth and soft bread that her recovering system could handle. He kept her room supplied with fresh water, arguing with Mrs. Harrison until the landlady agreed to send up clean linens. He read to her from a week-old newspaper, his deep voice making even the mundane cattle reports and weather forecasts sound interesting. And slowly, steadily, Lily began to recover. As the fever broke and her strength returned, they talked. Cole told her about life on the trail, about driving cattle north through Indian Territory and across the Kansas plains. He spoke of dawn breaking over endless grasslands, of rivers that had to be forded with the whole herd swimming across, of nights spent under stars so bright and numerous they looked like scattered diamonds. He told her about his brothers, still working the family ranch down in Texas, and about his dream of someday having enough money to buy his own spread somewhere with good water and better grass. Lily, in turn, told him about growing up in a small farming community in Missouri, about learning to read from her school teacher mother and learning to work with his hands from her carpenter father. She told him about the simple happiness of her childhood, Sunday picnics and community dances, and the security of being loved. And she told him about the desperate months after her parents died, when she sold everything they had owned to pay their debts and then set out alone, ending up in Dodge City because it was a place where a woman could find work, even if that work was hard and the pay was poor. "You are tougher than most cowboys I know," Cole said on the third day, when Lily was finally strong enough to sit up and eat a real meal. "Coming to a place like this alone, making your own way, that takes real courage." Lily shook her head, picking at the stew he had brought her. "It is not courage. It is just survival. I did what I had to do." "No," Cole said firmly. "There's a difference between just surviving and surviving with dignity. You have kept yourself clean and honest in a town that does not make that easy. You work hard, pay your debts, treat people with respect. That is not just survival. That is character." The praise made Lily feel warm in a way that had nothing to do with fever. She looked at Cole, really looked at him, and saw not just the handsome cowboy who had carried her to safety, but a good man with a kind heart and strong principles. And she realized with a start that made her breath catch that she was falling for him. The realization should have terrified her. She had known him less than a week. He was a drifter, a cowboy who would be heading back to Texas as soon as his business in Dodge was done. There was no future in caring for someone like that, no security or stability. But her heart did not seem to care about practical considerations. Her heart only knew that Cole Thornton had seen her at her weakest and stayed anyway, that he had cared for her with gentle hands and patient kindness, that he made her laugh with his trail stories and made her feel valued with his steady attention. On the fourth day, Lily was strong enough to stand and walk around the room. Cole had insisted she rest one more day before returning to work, and she had agreed, partly because she knew he was right, and partly because she could not bear the thought of him leaving. But she knew she was delaying the inevitable. He had a life to get back to, responsibilities waiting for him in Texas. "I should probably head out tomorrow," Cole said that evening, as if reading her thoughts. They were sitting together on the edge of the bed, a respectable distance between them, but not so far that they couldn't feel each other's presence. "The boys will be wondering what happened to me, and I have got stock to check on back home." "Of course," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady and failing. "You have already stayed much longer than you needed to. I cannot thank you enough for everything you have done." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to face her fully, his dark eyes serious and searching. "Come with me." Lily's heart stuttered. "What?" "Come back to Texas with me," Cole said. And now she could hear the nervousness in his voice, the vulnerability of someone taking a leap into the unknown. "I know we have not known each other long. I know this probably sounds crazy. But Lily, these past few days with you, they have meant something to me. You mean something to me. And I do not want to ride away and never see you again." "Cole," Lily breathed, torn between hope and fear. "I do not have anything. No money, no family, nothing to bring to a life with you. And what would people say? What would your family think?" "They would think I found a strong, brave, incredible woman who deserves a chance at something better than scrubbing saloon floors," Cole said. He took her hands in his, holding them carefully, like they were something precious. "I am not a rich man, Lily. I cannot promise you luxury or ease, but I can promise you a home, a place where you belong, and someone who will stand by you the way you have had to stand alone for too long." Lily felt tears spill over, running down her cheeks unchecked. "You really mean that?" "Every word," Cole said. "I know it is fast. I know we should probably take more time, do this proper. But life out here is uncertain, and when you find something real, something that matters, you do not let it slip away. So I am asking you, Lily Patterson, will you take a chance on me, on us?" She should have been practical. She should have thought about all the ways this could go wrong, all the risks and uncertainties. But she had been practical her whole life, careful and measured and safe. And where had it gotten her? Alone in a tiny room, working herself sick, with no future but more of the same. Cole was offering her something different. Not just security or comfort, but partnership. Love. A chance to build something real with someone who saw her worth. Yes, Lily said, and felt like she was stepping off a cliff into open air, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Yes, I will come with you. Cole's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and Lily buried her face against his shoulder, breathing in the scent of him, leather and sage and something uniquely his own. She felt his heart beating steady and strong beneath her cheek, and knew with absolute certainty that she was making the right choice. They left Dodge City 2 days later, after Lily had settled her debts and said goodbye to the few people she had come to know. Mrs. Harrison had been skeptical at first, warning Lily about cowboys and their wandering ways, but Cole had won her over with his respectful manner and obvious devotion. The landlady had even packed them food for the journey, pressing a basket into Lily's hands with gruff affection. The ride south was long and hot, but Lily did not mind. She rode behind Cole on his big bay gelding, her arms wrapped around his waist, watching the Kansas plains give way to Oklahoma territory and then finally to the rolling hills of North Texas. Cole pointed out landmarks, told her stories about different places they passed, and made her laugh with his commentary on the various towns they skirted. They stopped each night to make camp, and Cole was always a perfect gentleman, laying out separate bedrolls and keeping a respectful distance, but each night they sat closer by the fire. Each night their conversations grew deeper and more personal, and each night Lily felt more certain that she was exactly where she was meant to be. On the 8th day of travel, they crested a hill, and Cole pulled the horse to a stop. Below them, a valley spread out in shades of gold and green, with a winding creek cutting through the center. Near the creek stood a sprawling ranch house, weathered but sturdy, with a barn and several outbuildings scattered around it. Cattle grazed in the distance, and Lily could see horses in a corral near the barn. "That is home," Cole said, and she could hear the pride and love in his voice. "The Thornton Ranch. Been in my family for 30 years now." As they rode down into the valley, Lily felt nerves flutter in her stomach. She was about to meet Cole's family, the people who mattered most to him. What if they did not like her? What if they thought Cole had made a mistake bringing home a woman he barely knew? But her worries proved unfounded. Cole's mother, Margaret Thornton, met them on the porch, a tall woman in her 50s with graying hair and eyes the same warm brown as her son's. She took one look at Lily, travel-worn and nervous, and pulled her into a fierce hug. "Welcome home, dear," Margaret said. "Cole sent a telegram from the last town you passed through. Told us a bit about you and how you met. Any woman who can steal my stubborn boy's heart must be something special." Cole's 3 brothers were equally welcoming, though they gave Cole endless grief about his whirlwind romance. James, the eldest, shook Lily's hand with a grin and said, "Leave it to Cole to go north for cattle and come back with a wife instead." "We are not married yet," Cole said, but there was no heat in it, just amusement. "Yet being the important word," said Thomas, the second brother, winking at Lily. "Ma's already planning the wedding, I bet." Margaret swatted at Thomas with her apron, but did not deny it. "Let the poor girl get settled first before you start planning her life. Cole, show her to the guest room so she can wash up and rest. Supper will be ready in an hour." The guest room was simple but comfortable, with a real bed and a window that looked out over the creek. After more than a week of sleeping on the hard ground, it felt like incredible luxury. Lily washed her face and hands, changed into the one clean dress she had left, and tried to calm her racing heart. A soft knock on the door made her turn. Cole stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "You doing all right? I know this is a lot all at once." "I am fine," Lily said, and realized it was true. "Your family is wonderful. Your mother is amazing." Cole stepped into the room, leaving the door properly open. "She likes you. I can tell. And that matters because Ma is a good judge of character." He hesitated, then continued, "Lily, I meant what I said back in Dodge City. I want to marry you, build a life with you here. But I also do not want to rush you into anything you are not ready for. We can take our time, let you get settled and comfortable. There is no pressure." Lily crossed the room and took his hands. looking up into his earnest face. "Cole Thornton, I have never been more sure of anything in my life. You saved me, not just from the fever, but from a future that was slowly crushing my spirit. You gave me hope again and a place to belong. So yes, I want to marry you. Whenever you are ready, I will be ready too." Cole cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing gently across her cheekbones. "I love you, Lily Patterson. I know it is fast and probably crazy, but I do. I love your strength and your kindness and your courage. I love the way you faced down your fears and said yes to something unknown. I love everything about you." "I love you too," Lily whispered, and then Cole was kissing her, soft and sweet and full of promise. It was her first real kiss, and it made her head spin and her heart soar. When they finally broke apart, both of them were smiling. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in the nearest town, with Cole's family and half the county in attendance. Margaret had helped Lily make a dress from soft, cream-colored cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Lily wore wildflowers in her hair, picked that morning from the meadow by the creek. Cole wore his best suit, his dark hair slicked back, looking handsome enough to make her breath catch. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Cole kissed her in front of everyone, then swung her up in his arms and carried her back down the aisle to the cheers and applause of their guests. It reminded Lily of that first day when he had carried her up to her room in Dodge City, sick and scared. But this time she was healthy and happy, and being carried not to a lonely room but toward a future filled with love and possibility. The first year of marriage was an adjustment, learning to live with someone else after so long alone, learning the rhythms of ranch life and her place in it. Margaret taught Lily how to preserve food for winter, how to manage a household, and how to handle the account books for the ranch. Cole's brothers taught her to ride properly, teasing her gently when she fell off, and cheering when she finally managed to stay in the saddle through a full gallop. But it was Cole who taught her the most important lessons. He taught her that love was not just the passionate kisses and tender moments, though there were plenty of those. Love was also showing up every day, working side by side, supporting each other through difficulties and celebrating victories together. Love was Cole rubbing her sore shoulders after a long day of work. Love was Lily sitting up late to help him with paperwork, even when she was exhausted. Love was choosing each other over and over in 1,000 small ways. They had disagreements, of course. Lily's stubborn independence sometimes clashed with Cole's protective instincts. She wanted to pull her weight on the ranch, to work as hard as anyone else. And sometimes she pushed herself too hard. Cole worried about her, remembered finding her collapsed on that saloon floor, and sometimes tried to shield her from the harder tasks. They had to learn to communicate to find the balance between her need for autonomy and his need to care for her. One particular argument stood out in Lily's memory. It was spring, a year after their wedding, and the ranch was in the middle of branding. Lily had insisted on helping, working alongside the men to manage the calves. She had been doing fine until one particularly large calf knocked her down, leaving her bruised and covered in dust. Cole had been furious, not at her, but at the situation, at the danger she had been in. "You could have been seriously hurt," he had said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. "Trampled or kicked or worse." "But I was not," Lily had shot back, just as emotional. "Cole, I am not made of glass. I am a ranch wife, and this is my home too. I need to do my part." They had stared at each other, both breathing hard, before Cole had suddenly deflated. "I know," he said quietly. "I know you are strong and capable. But Lily, when I think about losing you, when I imagine something happening to you, it terrifies me. I cannot go through that. I cannot." Understanding had washed over Lily then. This was not about him thinking she was weak or incapable. This was about fear, about loving someone so much that the thought of losing them was unbearable. She had softened, stepped closer, taken his hands. "You're not going to lose me," she had said firmly. "I am careful. I pay attention. but I also need you to trust me to know my limits. Can you do that?" Cole had nodded slowly. "I can try, but you have to promise me that if something feels too dangerous, you will step back. No being stubborn, just to prove a point." "Deal," Lily had agreed, and they had sealed it with a kiss that had quickly turned into more until they were both laughing and the argument was forgotten. The second year of their marriage brought new challenges and new joys. A harsh winter tested everyone's endurance with blizzards that lasted days and temperatures that dropped well below freezing. The family huddled together in the ranch house, rationing supplies and praying the livestock would survive. Lily learned what true partnership meant during those long months, as everyone worked together to keep the ranch running and the family safe. When spring finally came, bringing warmth and new grass and baby calves, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The realization had come one morning when she was helping Margaret in the kitchen and suddenly had to run outside to be sick. Margaret had followed her, held her hair back, and then smiled knowingly. "I wondered when this might happen," Margaret had said gently. "How are you feeling about it?" Lily had been overwhelmed with emotion, joy, and fear all tangled together. "I am happy. Terrified but happy. What if I am not a good mother? What if something goes wrong?" "You will be a wonderful mother," Margaret had assured her. "You have so much love to give, and you are stronger than you know. As for something going wrong, well, we cannot control everything. We just do our best and have faith, and you will have all of us here to help you." Telling Cole had been one of the best moments of Lily's life. She had waited until evening, when they were alone in their room, the lamp casting soft light across the bed where they sat together. He had been telling her about his day, about a new horse he was training when she had interrupted him. "Cole, I have something to tell you." He had stopped mid-sentence, immediately attentive. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong," Lily had said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. "Something is very, very right. We are going to have a baby." Cole had stared at her, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding to pure, unfiltered joy. "A baby! We are going to have a baby!" When she nodded, he had let out a whoop of excitement, then immediately gentled, worried about being too rough. "Are you all right? How are you feeling? When did you find out? Does Ma know?" Lily had laughed at his barrage of questions, answering them one by one, and then Cole had kissed her with such tenderness and love that she had tears streaming down her face. The pregnancy was not easy. Morning sickness lasted well into the 4th month, and the summer heat made everything more uncomfortable. But Cole was attentive and patient, bringing her cool drinks and rubbing her swollen feet, reading to her on the nights when she could not get comfortable enough to sleep. His family rallied around them, Margaret sharing wisdom from raising 4 boys, Cole's brothers building a cradle and baby furniture. Their son was born on a cold December morning in 1880. After a labor that lasted most of the night, Margaret served as midwife, with Cole at Lily's side the entire time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Cole had cried openly, holding his son with trembling hands and looking at Lily like she had just given him the world. They named him Samuel, after Lily's father, with the middle name of James, after Cole's eldest brother. Samuel Thornton was a healthy, hungry baby with his father's dark eyes and his mother's stubborn determination. He barely slept those first few months, keeping the entire household awake with his demands, but no one minded much. He was the first grandchild, the next generation of Thorntons, and everyone doted on him. Lily had worried about being a good mother, but she found that it came more naturally than she had expected. Yes, there were difficult moments, times when Samuel would not stop crying, or she was so exhausted she could barely think. But there were also moments of pure magic, like when Samuel first smiled at her, or when he wrapped his tiny hand around her finger, or when she watched Cole rock their son to sleep, singing an old cowboy lullaby in his deep, rumbling voice. The years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life, Samuel grew from a baby into a toddler, into a sturdy little boy who followed his father everywhere, learning to ride almost before he could walk properly. When Samuel was 3, Lily became pregnant again, and this time the pregnancy was easier. Their daughter, Grace Margaret, was born in the spring of 1884, a quiet baby who seemed content to watch the world with serious blue eyes. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that tested their resources and years when cattle prices dropped and money was tight. There were injuries and illnesses, scares that reminded them how fragile life could be. When Samuel was 5, he fell from a horse and broke his arm. Lily had held him while Cole set the bone, both parents white-faced with worry, though they tried to be brave for their son. There were also conflicts beyond the ranch. The open range was closing, fences going up as more settlers moved west. Some of the old-time ranchers resented the changes, leading to tensions and occasional violence. Cole worked hard to be a voice of reason, advocating for cooperation rather than conflict, but it was not always easy. Lily supported him through those difficult negotiations, offering advice and perspective, helping him see solutions he might have missed. But through all the challenges, their love remained steady and strong. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Cole took Lily on a ride up to the ridge that overlooked the valley, the same place where he had first shown her the ranch. They stood together watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "I have been thinking about that day I found you in the saloon," Cole said quietly, "about how close I came to just walking away, getting my drink somewhere else, not getting involved. And I cannot imagine what my life would be like if I had made that choice. You are everything to me, Lily. You and the children. You are my home, my heart, my reason for everything." Lily turned to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. There was gray starting to show in his dark hair now, and lines around his eyes had deepened. But to her, he was just as handsome as the day he had carried her up those stairs. "You saved my life that day, not just from the fever, but from a life of loneliness and struggle. You gave me a family, a purpose, a love I never dreamed I could have. I thank God every day that you walked into that saloon." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. More years passed, bringing more changes. Samuel grew into a young man, tall and capable like his father, with dreams of expanding the ranch and introducing new breeding techniques he had read about. Grace became a bright, curious girl who loved books and learning, who wanted to be a teacher someday. Cole's brothers married and had children of their own, filling the ranch with noise and laughter and the chaos of a growing family. Margaret grew older, her hair completely gray now, but she remained the heart of the family, holding everyone together with her wisdom and love. When she fell ill during the winter of 1893, the entire family gathered around her. Lily sat by her bedside for hours, holding the hand of the woman who had welcomed her without question, who had taught her and supported her and loved her like a daughter. "You have been so good for Cole," Margaret whispered one afternoon, her voice weak but clear. "I knew it the moment I saw you. Knew you were the right one for him. You made him happier than I ever thought possible." "He did the same for me," Lily said, tears streaming down her face. "And you gave me a family again, gave me a place to belong. I will never forget that." Margaret smiled. "You were always family from the moment you arrived, and you will take care of everyone when I'm gone. I know you will." Margaret Thornton passed peacefully 2 days later, surrounded by her sons and their families. The loss was profound, but it also brought the family closer together. Lily stepped into the role Margaret had held, managing the household and helping to raise the youngest generation of Thorntons. It was a responsibility she took seriously, honoring the woman who had shown her such kindness. By 1895, Samuel was 20 years old and courting a girl from a neighboring ranch, a spirited redhead named Anna who reminded Lily of herself at that age. Grace was 15, teaching younger children at the local school and showing every sign of being brilliant. The ranch was prospering, with Cole and his brothers working in partnership to expand their holdings and improve their stock. On a warm summer evening, Lily and Cole sat on the porch of the ranch house, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. They were both in their 40s now, their bodies showing the wear of hard work and full lives, but their love had only deepened with time. "Do you ever think about how different your life could have been?" Lily asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "If you had not stopped at that saloon that day?" Cole was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes, but I cannot really imagine it anymore. Being with you, building this life, raising our children, it all feels so inevitable now. Like everything that came before was just leading me to that moment when I walked through those doors and saw you. I was so sick," Lily remembered, "so scared and alone. And then you were just there, this stranger who cared when no one else did." "You were never really a stranger," Cole said. "Not from the first moment. I looked at you and just knew somewhere deep inside that you were going to matter, that you were going to change everything." "I love you," Lily said, simple and true. "After all these years, through everything we have faced, I love you more than I can say." Cole kissed the top of her head. "I love you too. Always have. Always will." They sat together as night fell completely, the stars coming out one by one, and Lily thought about the long road that had brought her here. From that tiny room in Dodge City, scrubbing floors with a fever burning her up inside, to this porch in Texas, surrounded by family and love, and a life she had built with the man who had stayed close when she needed him most. It had not always been easy, but it had been real and true and worth every moment. Samuel married Anna in the fall of 1896, and the wedding was a grand celebration with people coming from all over the county. Lily watched her son pledge his love to his bride and saw echoes of her own wedding day, the same nervous excitement and absolute certainty. Cole squeezed her hand, and when she looked at him, she saw tears in his eyes. "Our boy is all grown up," he whispered. "He is," Lily agreed. "And he found someone wonderful just like his father did." Grace left for a teaching college in Dallas the following year, though she promised to come home for holidays and summers. Lily missed her daughter terribly, but she was also proud beyond measure. Grace had opportunities that Lily had never dreamed of, could make choices about her future based on her dreams rather than just survival. That was everything Lily had wanted for her children, the freedom to become whoever they wanted to be. With the children grown and starting their own lives, Lily and Cole found themselves entering a new phase of their relationship. They had more time together, could take rides without worrying about who was watching the kids, could talk late into the night without being interrupted. In some ways, it felt like falling in love all over again, rediscovering each other without the constant demands of raising a family. They traveled a bit, visiting cities Lily had only read about, seeing sights that had seemed impossible when she was that sick girl in Dodge City. But they always came home to the ranch, to the land, and life they had built together. The ranch was in their blood now, as much a part of them as their own heartbeats. Samuel and Anna had their first child in 1898, a daughter they named Lily Margaret. Holding her namesake for the first time, Lily felt the circle of life complete itself. She was a grandmother now, part of a legacy that would continue beyond her. Cole stood beside her, looking at his granddaughter with wonder, and Lily knew he felt the same sense of completion, of purpose, fulfilled. The new century arrived with celebration and hope. On New Year's Day 1900, the entire Thornton clan gathered at the ranch house, 3 generations under one roof. They toasted the future, sang old songs, and told stories about the past. Samuel asked Cole to tell the story of how he and Lily met, and Cole obliged, though he had told it 100 times before. "I walked into that saloon looking for a drink," Cole said, his arm around Lily's waist, "and I found my whole life instead. Your grandmother was scrubbing floors with a fever burning so hot she could barely stand. I carried her to bed and stayed close, and I have been staying close ever since." "It is the most romantic thing I have ever heard," Anna said, sighing happily. "It was not romantic at the time," Lily said with a laugh. I was delirious and probably smelled terrible and kept insisting I had to keep working. You were beautiful, Cole said firmly, sick and stubborn and trying so hard to be brave. And I fell in love with you right then, even though I did not realize it yet. When did you realize it? Grace asked, home for the holidays with stories about her teaching and plans for the future. Cole thought about it. Probably the second or third day when the fever broke a little, and you started talking to me. Really talking. Sharing your story and listening to mine. I remember thinking that I could listen to you talk forever, that I wanted to know everything about you, and I knew I did not want to leave Dodge City without you. And I knew that if I let you leave without me, I would regret it for the rest of my life, Lily added. So I took the biggest risk I had ever taken and said yes. Best decision you ever made, Cole said, grinning. Second best, Lily corrected. The best decision was when I kept scrubbing that floor long enough for you to walk in and find me. Everyone laughed, and the conversation moved on to other topics, but later, when everyone had gone to bed and Lily and Cole were alone in their room, he took her hand. Do you really think that? He asked quietly. That getting sick, nearly collapsing, working yourself to that point was a good decision? Lily squeezed his hand. No, the situation was terrible, but it led me to you, and that made everything worth it. All the pain and struggle and fear, all of it brought me to that moment when you walked through those doors. So yes, I am grateful for all of it, because without it, I would not have this life. I would not have you. Cole pulled her close, and they stood together in the lamplight. Two people who had weathered storms and celebrated joys, who had built a life from nothing but determination and love. They had been young once, the cowboy and the fever-sick girl, but time had seasoned them, deepened them, made their love something solid and unshakable. The years continued to pass, bringing more grandchildren and new challenges and the constant evolution that is life. Cole's hair went completely gray, and Lily noticed aches in joints that had never bothered her before. But they still worked the ranch together, still rode out to check on the cattle, still made plans for the future. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1909, their children and grandchildren threw them a party that brought half the county to the ranch. There was music and dancing and enough food to feed an army. Samuel gave a toast, thanking his parents for showing him what real love looked like, for building a family and legacy that would endure. Grace read a poem she had written about her parents' love story, about a cowboy who saved a girl and found his heart in the process. By the end, there was not a dry eye in the house. Even the tough ranch hands who worked for the Thorntons were wiping their faces and pretending they had dust in their eyes. When it was their turn to speak, Cole stood and pulled Lily up with him. They faced the crowd of people they loved, the family they had created and nurtured, and Cole's voice was strong and clear. 30 years ago, I walked into a saloon in Dodge City and my life changed forever. I found this incredible woman, strong and brave and beautiful, and somehow I convinced her to take a chance on me. Everything good in my life, everything that matters, comes from that moment. Lily, you are my partner, my best friend, my greatest love. Thank you for 30 years of adventure and joy and love. Here is to 30 more. They kissed while everyone cheered, and Lily felt like the luckiest woman alive. But time is relentless, and even the strongest eventually slow. In the winter of 1912, Cole fell ill with pneumonia. Lily nursed him with the same dedication he had once shown her, sitting by his bedside, keeping watch, refusing to leave even when their children begged her to rest. She pressed cool cloths to his forehead when the fever raged, coaxed him to drink when he was too weak to protest, and held his hand through the long nights. You have to fight, she whispered fiercely one particularly bad night. Cole Thornton, you listened to me. You fought for me when I was sick, and now I am fighting for you, but I need you to fight too. I am not ready to lose you. Our grandchildren need you. Samuel needs your guidance. Grace needs your support. And I need you, Cole. I need you so much. Cole opened his eyes, focusing on her with difficulty. "Not going anywhere," he managed, his voice rough but determined. "Made you a promise, remember? Staying close." And he did. Cole pulled through the pneumonia, though it took weeks of recovery. He emerged thinner and weaker than before, but alive. Lily thanked God every day for sparing him, for giving them more time together. They both knew they were living on borrowed time now, that the years ahead would be fewer than the years behind, but that just made each day more precious. They made the most of the time they had. They took slow rides around the ranch, Cole pointing out changes and improvements, Lily listening and adding her own observations. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset paint the sky. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly, telling stories and teaching skills and loving them with the special intensity of people who know that every moment counts. Samuel took over more of the ranch operations, though he always consulted his father on major decisions. Grace married a fellow teacher and settled in Dallas, but she visited often, bringing her husband and eventually her own children to the ranch. The Thornton legacy was secure, growing stronger with each generation. On a warm spring day in 1918, Lily and Cole rode out to their favorite spot on the ridge. They moved slowly now, their bodies no longer capable of the hard work of their youth, but they still managed. They dismounted carefully and stood together looking out over the valley they had called home for so many years. "Do you remember the first time we stood here?" Cole asked. "When I brought you home and showed you the ranch?" "I was so nervous," Lily recalled. "Scared your family would not accept me, worried I had made a terrible mistake, but you were so sure, so confident that everything would be all right." "I was terrified," Cole admitted with a laugh, "but I could not let you see that. Had to be strong for both of us." Lily leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her, just like he had done countless times over 40 years of marriage. "We did all right, did we not? Built a good life, raised good children, left something worthwhile behind?" "We did better than all right," Cole said. "We did extraordinary. And it all started because I could not walk away from a sick woman scrubbing floors. Best impulse I ever followed." "Best day of my life," Lily said, "even with the fever and the fear, because it brought me to you." They stood there for a long time, two people who had loved each other through poverty and prosperity, sickness and health, joy and sorrow. Their bodies were old now, worn by time and work, but their hearts were young, still beating in sync, still connected by the bond they had forged in that tiny room in Dodge City so long ago. The sun was setting when they finally mounted up and rode back down to the ranch house. Smoke rose from the chimney and lights glowed in the windows. Through the glass they could see their family gathered for Sunday supper, Samuel and Anna with their children, Grace visiting with her family, and all the noise and chaos and love that came with a large family gathering. Cole helped Lily dismount, then took her hand as they walked toward the house. At the door, he paused and turned to her, his eyes serious and full of emotion. "I love you, Lily Thornton. From that first day to this one, from now until my last breath, I love you with everything I am." "I love you too, Cole," Lily said, rising on her toes to kiss him. "Thank you for carrying me to bed and staying close. Thank you for giving me a life beyond anything I could have imagined." "Thank you for saying yes," Cole replied, "for trusting me when you had no reason to, for building this life with me." They walked into the house together, surrounded immediately by the warmth and love of family, and Lily knew that this was what happiness looked like. Not some distant dream or impossible fantasy, but this real, tangible life they had created together. A life that had started with a fever and a cowboy's kindness and grown into something beautiful and enduring. Years later, when Lily was very old and her memories sometimes got confused, mixing past and present in ways that frustrated her, she never forgot that day. She never forgot the feeling of Cole's arms carrying her to safety, never forgot his steady presence through the worst of the fever, never forgot the moment she decided to take a chance on love. And when Cole sat beside her, Holding her hand just like he had done in that tiny room in Dodge City, she would smile and say, "You stayed." "Always," Cole would reply. "I promised I would stay close, and I meant it." And he did, right up until the end. When Lily passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1925, Cole was holding her hand. He followed her just 3 months later, unable to imagine a world without her in it. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the big Texas sky they had loved, together even in death as they had been in life. Their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren continued the legacy they had built, working the land and raising families and telling the story of the cowboy and the fever-sick girl who had fallen in love against all odds. It became a family legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories start in the most unexpected ways, and that true love, real love, is worth whatever risks it takes to find it. The Thornton Ranch prospered for generations, a testament to the foundation Cole and Lily had built. And on warm spring evenings, when the sun set in shades of gold and pink, people said you could sometimes see two figures standing on the ridge, holding hands and looking out over the valley, still together, still in love, still proving that some bonds are strong enough to transcend even death itself.